You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to a full-strength Colts Blue Zone podcast.
This is going to be a good one.
I sincerely hope so.
Glad to be back.
We have the content as our producer Matt Adams returns. Mike Chappell with us as always. I'm Dave Griffiths. Appreciate you all listening, tuning in. Do encourage you to subscribe if you are not already so. Get us downloaded to your podcast listening device as soon as we drop every week. And the Indianapolis Colts, what I've learned, Chap, in my 10 years, in November 2014, I moved here to central Indiana, covering the Colts for Fox 59 CBS 4. And in that decade, I have learned that the Indianapolis Colts are never not interesting. There is always something, whether it's a quarterback who's retiring or a former player who's returning as a head coach, or it's a flip-flopping of one quarterback to another as we have this year. That seems to be the winner for this 2024 Colts season is going back and forth at quarterback as the Horseshoes have decided to return to Anthony Richardson as their starter following 2 losses under the brief tenure of Joe Flacco.
What I'm curious of is what if Flacco had played better and they had won one of those games? Then what? I mean, do you go back? Would you normally go back to him? From what I read, again, full disclosure, I wasn't there yesterday. Had stuff to do. And again, anytime you miss a day at work, stuff's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it is. But there was still no specifics of what went on, from, was it practice to walkthroughs to meetings and all that stuff. Something wasn't right, and whatever he said we demanded a higher standard. Was that the phrase?
I believe so. Yes,
higher standard.
So hopefully in these past 2 weeks the light's gone on. I don't know, but I pardon me for rambling, but it's hard for me to understand, other than he was 20 years old when he was drafted, how you don't come into this understanding what you were taking on. The money and the responsibilities. Hopefully this was, as somebody mentioned, a wake-up call. I think Michael Pittman mentioned that.
That was the words he used, yes.
I used a two-week timeout, go sit in the corner and then don't come out until you're ready. But what would have happened if Joe had played well? Because Steichen never really said that this, when he benched him, that this was, in their mind, was a 2-week hiatus to learn. It was just where he needed time to whatever. So here they are, and from everything Shane said is, barring injury, he's your guy for the rest of the season. So, hopefully he doesn't go out there against the Jets and go 10 for 32. I mean, then where are you? But we said all along that I understood why they benched him. I think Richardson forced the benching with how he was playing. Now, we didn't know all the other stuff going on. But at the same time now, I think Flacco has shown that you can't stick with the veteran. You have to go back to the quarterback who is supposed to be your future. You've got to find out what this guy has for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it was always going to be the case that he would start again. You figured, and I figured the same thing, that this wasn't going to be a permanent space on the bench, that Anthony Richardson's future is still in his hands somewhat.
Right.
Like the Colts didn't completely take it out of his hands.
And if he wasn't going to start again, they would have made that decision that he was done and he wasn't the guy after 10 starts.
Right.
And what that does is totally destroys your evaluation process to bring him in. So again, how many times Shane 2 or 3 times mentioned he's our quarterback of the future. He's our franchise quarterback. That's still like we hope, because you just don't know.
With Richardson right now, as he returns to the lineup, there have been maybe some, you could call them inconsistencies with how Shane Steichen has addressed this. You can say that Joe Flacco gives us the best chance to win, is what he said. So is that not true anymore now that they're bringing Anthony Richardson back?
What that also meant is that Anthony Richardson did not give us the best chance to win.
Exactly.
So it's again, I thought Shane was much more open on Wednesday, but he still didn't get down in the weeds and really explain what was going on that Richardson wasn't doing. And it seems like it was attention, it was focus, it was time. Maybe he wouldn't put in, if quarterbacks put in 8 hours on Tuesday, maybe he was putting in 6. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. So Richardson gives you the best chance to win now. We'll see. And the only thing that's going to matter is how he plays and how this team does. And I know fans don't want to hear it. The playoffs are still sort of right there. In this AFC, they are.
So it's a bad conference,
it is. I'm not saying division. I'm saying conference.
Yeah. I mean, it's there because there's just nobody that 6th or that 7th spot. It's there for the taking.
You like Cincy. You like where Cincy is.
Right.
I mean, with how they've played, but you play the Jets who are below you, and the big one obviously is going to be Denver.
Mm-hmm. That's the
because
biggest one.
they're aren't they? I think they're the 6th seed now. I think.
Yes.
So, to beat them and whether you then it means you got the tie breaks. It's right there. And if you can get, we've said this before, if they could find a way to beat the Jets, who are a dumpster fire.
Yep.
And if you get up on the Jets on Sunday, 10-0, I bet there's some quitting these guys.
Yeah.
Not Colts, in the Jets. And then Detroit's going to be what Detroit is. But doggone, in those last 5 games, there is the opportunity to do something, starting with Denver, which has played better than people thought. Mm-hmm. But all that you've gone through, all of this, it's still there. But you can't keep, Houston lost again and this team lost. No, you got to get your act together. And depending on how this goes, 9-8 might get you the wild card. Mm-hmm. It might. 9-8 might. Now, 8-9 is not going to. 9-8 could, and there is a path to 9-8 that's not even remotely unrealistic.
No, it is. It's very realistic, but so much hinges on this game. So much. Because, and of course, if you win this game, then there's going to be one in the future where we say the same thing. So much hinges on the Broncos game, for example. Right. But you got to win this game the right to make the next game.
Right, because if you don't win this game, then the next one doesn't. You've got to build them. You got to stack them.
Then you're off schedule when you lose games like this. Is the term that we like to lose, because then you got to beat someone like the Lions, and that's a tough task for anybody in the NFL.
I'm almost ready to put my prediction in on that game right now.
Yeah, we can pencil it in. At least we'll get ready for the Sharpie baby by the end of our time here on the Colts Blue Zone podcast. It's like I look at this benching. And from the outside, you kind of wonder, at least gameplay wise, the Colts obviously didn't gain anything because they lost 2 games. But I don't know if they lost anything either, because these are 2 games that you don't think that they were going to win no matter who the quarterback was. I mean, it was at Minnesota, a 5-2 team. They had lost 2 games in a row. They weren't playing their best they had earlier in the season, but they were still the better team that day. The offense was really bad. Like, they scored 6 points. We discussed it last week when I just jotted one thing after the other that the offense put in its worst performance of the season. And then they lost the other game that they lost with Flacco as the starter was Buffalo. You're not going to beat the Buffalo Bills, who are 7-2. Like right. That would take a big surprise. So it was 2 teams that you thought they were going to lose, and they lost. And if the only thing you avoided was Anthony Richardson further falling into the dumps because he was floundering, then maybe that's a good time to pull him out and just settle him down. Focus on the work behind the scenes. He doesn't have to take those hits against those 2 teams who are good defenses that you thought
Minnesota
would
have been tough for him to go into.
Yes, so I'm saying I'm not sitting here saying that the Colts were really outward thinking about this as a major factor in benching him, but the benching came at a time where it was convenient for him to be on the bench because he was not going against these teams. I think that would have been real struggles for him to face while he's going through these other struggles, obviously with, as the Colts have said, professionalism and focus and just trying to grow personally, blah blah blah. It was a convenient time for him to be out, is all I'm saying. I don't think, like I said, the Colts made that decision purposely to pull him out for these 2 weeks. I think that is a nice byproduct of pulling him out at this time, is he didn't have to lose these 2 games himself.
Well, and so now he's back, and we'll see where this goes. It's as you probably mentioned, this is up to him. What happens now is up to him, and if it doesn't work, some of it will be on him. Some on the Colts, again, if there were these issues before, there were these issues before the benching, at some level they allowed it, and they either enabled it or whatever. People around him probably didn't help it. So that's done. That's done. Move forward. And I think there was a bit of being humbled by this. We were talking at one point, like the tap out. One play. It's going to be with him for a while until he establishes himself or whatever. It's going to be, oh, yeah, you're the guy that tapped out. Well, he's got the chance now to really re-identify who he is and how he's going to do it. Relatively healthy team, I guess. I mean, no Ryan Kelly, but I think we'll get the injury report that Michael Pittman's practicing today. Mm-hmm. I think that means he plays.
Probably. If
Sunday.
He practiced Wednesday and Thursday, you would think.
Well, yesterday was a walkthrough. It was like, if we practice, this is what.
But still, an indication like.
Well, if I'm the team, I would have said Pittman didn't practice.
Didn't practice.
I mean, yeah. So I thought when I saw that, I realized what those estimations mean. But when you put that out there, I think he plays. Yeah. And I think we're going to get used for the rest of the season. As we said the previous weeks, he'll practice one day, not practice, play, and then go through it again. Well, last week I was a little surprised he didn't practice or he didn't play, but it just showed you that it got to the point that he had to be really debilitated to not play, knowing Michael Pittman.
And he also had the finger thing that had happened.
Yeah, but
I know it's not a huge thing, but you compound that with the back.
Right, but it was the back.
Yeah.
And the defense is, for the most part, together. So it's a very, like you said, it was a very convenient time to bench him for a lot of reasons. This was a good chance to come back, and you're not in prime time, which I think is
thank goodness, right?
I think it's important for him, although you're going to get the New York crowd anyway. But again, it's up to him. I hope he's a good kid. I know fans don't want to get too deep with it. He's a good kid, mm-hmm. and if you're in listening, and how would you have handled it when you were 22 or 20? Mm-hmm. And they gave you a $22 million signing bonus, and hey, this is pretty cool. Well, then it's your job.
Yeah.
You're not the CEO, but you're darn close. So hopefully the light did go on, and it's all up to him for the most part going forward.
We're seeing a little bit in this case of the other side of the coin of the $40, $50 million a year deals that we talk about through the offseason all the time. And we're like, dang, these are huge contracts. They keep going up. Jim Irsay calls Anthony Richardson, said he's going to be the first $500 million quarterback or whatever in his lifetime, which is still a possibility.
Sure it is.
But like this is, like I said, the other side of the coin. This is what earning $40, $50 million a year demands that we don't often talk about during that time. We just talk about the skills the guy has on the field and not all the expectations off of it, And
no other position demands his attention.
No, this is by far the most important position in sports. That is why guys like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert are getting these massive contracts every year now. It just keeps going up. And it is not a ludicrous thing for a 20-year-old kid drafted into the league to not fully grasp that. So
with 13 starts in college.
Exactly. So now you've had the come to Jesus moment. Now there are no excuses because everything's been laid on the table.
He can't say, well, I didn't know. No, you've told him.
Now you know.
He may have a checklist to do every day.
Yeah, like I say this. Like I say it's okay not to know something, but you got to tell me you don't know.
Right.
Or once we've dealt with it, if we've said it once, like that's it. Like now you know. Now that's not an excuse anymore. That now becomes all about execution. And if you can't execute on the field, now that you know what's expected of you off the field, that's completely on you. And then that's the last chance you get if you want to be the starting quarterback here, at least, in Indianapolis for your future. So
a lack of preparation. You got to understand. Like when I think about it, I still default to the Peyton Manning years, where this was 24/7 for him. It was.
Yeah.
He was literally the first one in the building and the last to leave. And I think Andrew Luck was that way. I really do. But on the flip side, remember Kyler Murray? Remember he got the big contract and they wanted to put in, was it a clause?
Study hall clause.
Study hall clause.
Yeah, film session.
Are you kidding me? But that just shows you that all these guys aren't wired the same way. And Murray's another one of those incredibly gifted players. Mm-hmm. And again, maybe AR just was able to get by so much with doing whatever level because he was just better than everybody else. And now here you're not better than everybody else. Mm-hmm. So much. We walked through that locker room, and all those guys are elite athletes. They are. And it's the old little things that separate good from great from good, whatever. And hopefully that he had a come to Jesus meeting because there was one. Mm-hmm. I hope he was paying attention.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's one thing to not know, but then it's another to know, and then it still doesn't, the light doesn't go on. I just know that I do believe what Steichen said yesterday, that he is our future. Pittman said that. Zaire Franklin said that.
Yep.
Pittman
Buckner
told me
said
that a couple. Yeah, yep. He told me that a couple weeks ago. He said, "Yeah." He said, "We're going with Flacco." He said, "But we know who our quarterback is." Mm-hmm. So that was never a question. The locker room never turned on Richardson. It didn't.
Never.
Never. And
0%.
that's not saying they didn't embrace Flacco. They did. But this guy is either the future, or he's going to be the reason there's a major reset again after next year. I don't know. It depends on how these last 7 games go. But as we've said, the bottom line is you've got to know at the end of the season. I don't care if you're 9-8 in the playoffs. I don't care if you're 7-10. You've got to know, is this guy taking us into the future, or are we doing this all over again next offseason?
Well, you're bringing Anthony Richardson back on the season, completing 44.4% of his passes for 958 yards. He has 4 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, has lost 1 fumble as well, as he's been sacked 9 times. He'll try to improve on all those stats as the Colts travel to New York this weekend to take on the Jets. Colts 4-5. Jets are 3-6, or there's 3-6. They have to be 3-7.
Oh, I thought I had 3-7.
Colts are 4-6.
Colts are 4-6. Like I said, the Colts are 4-6, and yeah, the Jets are 3-7. So I knew it was 1 game difference, and it was my screw up by saying 4-5 that got me off kilter. So thank you, chap.
Hey, it's not out of the realm of possibility for your harried producer to have a mistype. You'll notice that later down here in your program, Aaron Rodgers is throwing passes for the Jets.
You got to watch out for Aaron Rodgers. He's a talented player. But anyway, we'll get to New York in a little bit. I do want to touch on, before we dive really more headfirst into this game, some news that broke this Thursday morning as we tape the podcast, is that the NFL Scouting Combine is staying in Indianapolis through at least the year 2026. Of course, the city and the NFL were contracted through next year, 2025, but now they added one more. And as much as the NFL loves to talk about bringing the Combine to LA, to put it
taking it on the road
to beautiful SoFi Stadium, bring it to a warm weather place, Dallas, Arlington, Jerry's World, a fancy pants, they just cannot take it away from Indianapolis.
Cooler heads prevailed. I mean, some things, the draft works when you take it from Philly to Chicago. Mm-hmm. It does. It's simply Vegas. It does, because it's just a show. It's just for looks, and it's a show. The Combine is so much more. And I've talked to Jeff Foster, the head of NFL Combine, and he knows, I think, that at some point it will leave for a year or two. But like I said, what would be the problem with LA? He said, there's no problem if I could just take IU Health with me. Because this isn't about the NFL experience and fans watching. This is about the medicals and the interviews and the x-rays and MRIs. And it's the convenience of it. And what they'll do, one of these years, they will take it to Dallas or LA, because the NFL gets what the NFL wants. It just does. And they're just going to see that, oh, that didn't work very well. And then you come back here. It's a great thing for Indy. I enjoy it. It's 3 or 4 busy days, but you got every player that's going to be in the draft is here. You talk to them for the most part. Marvin Harrison changed that last year. But the big thing for the writers is it's gotten to be, it's where most of the GMs and most of the coaches talk.
Right.
And you have sometimes that's the only chance. That's the first chance that the local guys get with their guy, which is ridiculous, but that's another story. But it's invaluable. You have all the assets here. You get 15 minutes with coaches and players and GMs. So it was going to be here next year, or in 05, and now it's in 26. So I just think that it needs to stay here, and that's not Indy thing. It's just it works here. It's been here since '87.
'87, yep.
So when things work, why are you trying to fix what's not broken? Right. How you can't make better by moving it?
Right. It's pretty instructive to me. I mean, the NFL, I think in 2021 is when they opened the bidding process for the scouting combine.
And here we are.
Getting another year extension in Indianapolis because the city just works. It's the convenience and all that stuff.
And they've had other cities come here. Whoever would the NFL types from Dallas or LA to see how it works here from that time.
Right.
And they still can. And
still can't outbid them,
it's still here. So
they hate us because they ain't us.
So for like 7 days, 10 days, Indy is the center of the NFL universe, and it's a cool thing. But it is because it works. It's grown into such a huge thing with the GMs and all this. But the purpose of it hasn't changed. It's only gotten better as far as streamlining it, logistics. Try to fly 300 some players in at the same time within a 3-day span, and then weather gets involved in all this. So Indy is it works because it's centrally located. It's easy to get to. A lot of these guys can drive to it. Mm-hmm. Do that in LA, do it in Dallas, and it's not quite the same. Again, one of these years they'll take it somewhere because that's what the NFL wants,
and the money will speak loud enough eventually to move.
Right.
And the coaches and GMs, they don't want to move this,
right?
Because of course GMs and coaches, they like continuity, they don't like change, but it just works here, and I just don't know that it works anywhere nearly that smoothly anywhere else.
If you move it somewhere else, at least right now, you would just have to really lengthen the time that guys stay there because they do so much, and it's in such a centrally located place. Like, you would have to extend the time by another week if you did it in LA or Dallas, because you need to bust these players all around to get from medical here and there. Like the hotels wouldn't be exactly like right next to the stadium like it is here. They don't have the convention center and the massive space that's right next to the Lucas Oil Stadium. It's like everything plays into the Colts' favor. They built it brilliantly. The people who put together the whole downtown plan for this event. And I know that this event wasn't the only thing on their mind, for sure. There was so much else on the city's mind when they were designing Lucas Oil Stadium. It got them a Super Bowl as well as many other things. But it is very much perfect for this event, and to get it somewhere else, which, as Chap says, it's going to happen at some point. It's just going to need to be a knock you off your socks type of scenario to do so, and that just hasn't happened yet because Indy keeps delivering, and proof that it keeps delivering. Last year, 2024, set records for attendance at 27,000 plus fans, and also economic impact on the city, earning more than $9.25 million to the city of Indianapolis. So it's going to be here for now. And enjoy it while you can. I know our fearless producer, Phil Nardiello, would very much like to see it gone, and I'm in his corner for that because we get requests from
you get deluged,
from 50 other stations across the country. Hey, our guy is talking at 8 a.m.
To talk to a guy from Appalachian State who's got a chance.
Exactly, yeah. So we have a lot of work, and and Phil's a great worker who feels responsible to do as much for these other stations as possible. So he does a lot, we do a lot. And it's a busy, stinking week for all of us. But nevertheless, Indy as a whole is, I'm sure, glad to have the Combine back for the 2026 season as well. Let's get a little bit into the Colts and the Jets, but I do want to touch on one thing as we begin our discussion, because it's something that I've kind of mentioned here in the past. I talk about it a little bit in the offseason here and there, and it's something that we brought up briefly earlier in this show, is that the Colts are going to a walkthrough for their Wednesday practice this week. And it's something they did last year with Shane Steichen as he came in. He said about halfway through the season, which is where we are now, he wanted to go through walkthroughs on Wednesdays just because it's a long NFL season. It allows
and you got a late bye.
You got a late bye as well.
That has a big part of it this year anyway.
Yes, for sure. But if you ask me, let me be the grump here for a second. It comes at a terrible time optically to cut back on practice. It just does. You've lost 3 games in a row. You can't figure out your quarterback situation. And now you're like, you know what's going to fix this problem? Less practice. I know that I'm the grump. I know I'm the old guy, the curmudgeon, who's not even 40 yet, for crying out loud, but set in my own ways, thinking that, you know what could help you? practicing football if you're not living up to the standards of the football that you're putting on the field on Sundays. But no, according to Shane Steichen, the problem that ails the Colts is less practice and going to walkthroughs on Wednesday instead of working a little bit harder out there on the field to try to right the ship. You're in my corner, chap?
I will see. I've gotten used to less and less and less, like with training camps, when they say it's going to be a harder, more physical training camp and nothing changes and they hit not a lot. I think there's a line of thinking that it's more important to get players rest. You've got Pittman, you got Braden Smith, you got Buck. I understand your point. You mean we're going to do less? Really? It could send a bad message to your team if the team doesn't respond to it. We'll see if this is going to be an every Wednesday thing. Is it not necessarily going to be every Wednesday, or is it just this Wednesday?
I think that's what they did last year. They went down to
their first
walkthrough
Wednesdays.
Because again, they don't practice Monday, Tuesday. They may have something light on Tuesday to kind of loosen the body up. No practice on Tuesday, so we'll see. I understand your point, but I so much more recently it's about getting players more physically ready to play, and then you do the old mental reps, and which the only way you know if it works or not is does the team respond to it. Now, if they go out there Sunday and just are flat and lay an egg, then you say what? And again, why do you practice on Wednesday? I get your point. I'm not quite at the top.
I know you're not.
I'm not quite at the top of the mountain screaming like you are.
No, I am.
But I understand. But I understand it. And again, you're in a not only have you lost 3 straight, but you've not played well.
Right.
And you'd think that the way you play better is to practice more.
You would think. And this is not the first time this is happening. It's not like I'm just plucking this out of the air, you know. You look back and, for me, it goes back to the 2021 offseason, which was the year after COVID, where they brought in Carson Wentz as a new quarterback, and then they decided, you know what, we're going to cancel basically the entire offseason program here. We're just not going to go out and work because we have the opportunity to do that. I know that some of the team leaders went to Chris Ballard and Frank Reich and kind of proposed this to just kind of go virtual in the offseason. And I thought that was a stupid decision at the time because you have a new quarterback and you have guys who need to get on the same page. And what happened? They lost their first 3 games of the year that year. And they keep losing their first game of the year, even though in the first year of Shane Steichen, 2023, last year, they canceled the last day of veteran minicamp. They just did only 2 of the 3 days. Okay, everybody go home. I'm like, what are you doing? You've lost the first game of the season.
They haven't earned.
You haven't earned this.
Right.
You haven't earned the right to take a day off of practice. I'm sure everybody's worked hard in the offseason, but let's look at what this team has done in recent years. They can't win week 1.
So do you think that in 2021, if they had the offseason program in place, then Carson Wentz would have had that weird foot bone injury earlier?
Right.
And then things might have gone better for them to start the season?
That's entirely possible. You never know.
He didn't have to play on 2 bad feet, because they had nobody
Tennessee.
else.
That's obviously not the point I'm making.
I know.
But you never know if they did. But then you get into the But my point is, you're thinking during that offseason, well, we'll have training camp. But then in training camp, everything blows up because he has the foot issue and people have COVID or close contacts.
Quentin has a foot.
Had the same thing happen.
You can't count on the future. The future is not guaranteed for you. You can't be like, oh, we'll continue to prepare well late in this season because something could come up later in the season that makes it more difficult to prepare. You need to prepare as well as you can right now for the opportunity that's in front of you, and that's the New York Jets this weekend. If players specifically need rest, you can give them days off, but you can have the entire rest of the team practice. That's legal. Right. You're allowed to do that, but no, you just give everybody the day off. So that's my point.
It's not a day off. I mean, they do
not day off. I'm sorry, you're right.
But again, let's not compare a walkthrough to practice.
No, it's different.
It's
not
different.
The same.
That's why they call it something different.
That's why they call it walkthrough.
And I'm sorry, I should not have said a day off. That was wrong.
But no, your point's well taken, and they're probably. No, I think they're in the building less on Wednesday now. Maybe they normally stay till 5 o'clock, and now when you don't have a practice and you have meetings, maybe you're gone by 4. I don't know. But it is. I totally understand what you're saying, and the only way that if it's right is how you come out and perform.
And I think if you ask players around the league, they would say probably the two toughest off seasons and training camps are in Kansas City and Pittsburgh. Kansas City wins championships under Andy Reid because that's what he does. Like he works people as hard as he can. And in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin, people clamor for his job every other year, but he hasn't had a losing season in his entire tenure there. So those are two franchises that are winning franchises, and they work people tough. That's all I have to say on the matter. And since neither of you are jumping in there, we can continue on. Yeah, exactly.
I was just going to say, Dave, the optics are it is funny because the implication sort of is that maybe Anthony Richardson wasn't doing the work that he needed to do. And then
maybe the Indianapolis Colts aren't doing the work they need to.
Okay, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not going to say that I agree with Dave because why would I do that?
No, I wouldn't either.
But I see where you're coming from.
Yes. Maybe. Okay. We'll move on there before I get myself into any serious hot water here. The Colts take on the Jets. It's a 1 p.m. kickoff, gracefully, because they are not on Sunday Night Football. They are flexed out of that position. So if you're in Central Indiana, you can watch that game on CBS 4 at 1 o'clock. Of course, the game is in New Jersey. All the New York teams, the only New York team was actually in Indianapolis last week with the Buffalo Bills. The other two New York teams play in New Jersey. So they'll do that at the new Meadowlands there, MetLife Stadium. We'll talk about injuries first. It was just a walkthrough on Wednesday, but the Colts listed Julian Blackmon and Michael Pittman Jr. as full participants in practice. Blackmon with a shoulder injury, Pittman Jr. dealing with his back. E.J. Speed was limited with a knee injury. And, of course, it does take plenty to be limited in a walkthrough practice. That might be a sign as to someone really to watch for rest of this week. And the other two, DeForest Buckner was not listed as did not participate with a foot injury. Bernard Ryman with his knee injury. Ryman certainly one to look out for. Because, well, he had his concussion. Then he played like half of last week against Buffalo.
And he was back on the sideline, and he wasn't moving too well.
No, he wasn't. Not at all. And he was wrapped up in the knee. So we'll have to keep an eye on him and see if Matt Gonzalez will get another start at left tackle there. The Jets had 13 players on their Wednesday injury report, which is what some teams do instead of giving them a walk-through practice. They just do a normal practice and put players who are banged up on injury reports, and they practice less.
That still bothers you, doesn't it?
I mean, to me, it's very obvious, and it shouldn't be this way.
But one thing that struck me about the Jets injury report, again, it's Wednesday, so it's early in the week and all that, but a lot of times when you do see the long injury list from the other team, there's a handful of players that are sitting because they're veterans and they're rest. It's rest.
Yep.
And that's what
teams are putting that on there now.
And, and they're putting that on there now. For the Jets this week, none of these guys were rest. The closest to that was Devontae Adams, who had wrist illness.
Yeah.
So, this is not a particularly great team. They've been just as tumultuous as the Colts this year, and they're also
I would
banged
say
up.
More so.
Yeah.
Yep.
More so. I think you're right, Dave.
Yeah.
In the NFL spectrum, it's Jets and Dallas. The Colts
Exactly.
the Colts are down the list a little bit with their problems.
Yeah. You said Devontae Adams with his wrist/illness did not participate. Cornerback Brandon Eccles has a concussion. He did not participate in Wednesday's practice, so we'll have to watch his status for the rest of the week. He leads the team with 2 interceptions. Not a team that really takes the ball away too much.
No, they only have 2 interceptions.
Exactly. Very much unlike the Bills last week.
So he's their interceptor.
Exactly, the one. Yes. So if he's out, then they have 0. 4 offensive linemen and 4 defensive backs were all listed on their injury report. We'll get a little bit more clarity as the week goes on there for sure. The Jets are 3-7. They are 3rd in the AFC East right now. Aaron Rodgers has at least been healthy this year, so we give him that, but has been very much a shadow of his former self. 2,258 passing yards is a reasonable number for 10 games in today's NFL. 15 touchdowns to 7 interceptions is the biggest number to me. Like, Rodgers would go through seasons where he'd have 2 interceptions.
Right.
16 games, 2 interceptions. And he'd have 43 touchdowns still. It was one of the singular things that Rodgers was elite at, was not throwing interceptions, not turning the ball over, not throwing that, as Andrew Luck used to say, bonehead pass, and getting his team into hot water that way. Well, this year, it's not quite as good. He's throwing 7 interceptions in 10 games played, and that's not a great ratio there. It's not a terrible ratio. I've seen worse, like Anthony Richardson
by his
throwing
standards.
7 interceptions. Yeah, exactly. So it is terrible by his standards. And he has some weapons, too. So you look at his weapons, guys like Garrett Wilson, I know Allen Lazard is on injured reserve now, but Wilson has 65 catches. He's their leader there for 704 yards, 5 touchdowns. 11 of those catches for 20-plus yards. He's a big play guy. And if you watch their Monday night game, I believe it was against, I forget who it was against. Maybe, I'm not even going to guess.
Houston.
But it was the incredible catch that he made. It might have been the Houston game. It was a couple weeks ago where it was the Odell Beckham Jr. catch on steroids in the back of the end zone. It was remarkable, the play that he made to come down with that ball. So he's great. Davante Adams is still good. In 4 games with the Jets, he has 20 catches for 200 yards and a touchdown.
I bet he leads them in targets too.
He probably does
since he got there.
Oh yeah, during that time, just because Rodgers has his guys that he loves,
right.
and Davante Adams is, very much on the top of that list. Braylon Allen, a rookie running back, has 223 rushing yards. Breece Hall is their stud running back who has 554 rushing yards, averaging 4.1 per. He can also catch the ball as well. Has 4 catches of 20-plus yards. He has 350 more yards through the air. So he's a guy that can do damage not just on the ground, but also in the passing game. He has 3 touchdowns. 3 runs of 20-plus yards as well. He has 3 fumbles, so he has put the ball on the ground a couple times, which you don't like to see. You look at this team and this offense, and you're curious, Chap, as to why they're struggling as much as they are, but it's most likely the offensive line in front of Rodgers, and that was it last year. I mean, he played 4 snaps, and he was hit like 4 times.
Yeah, but he was already running for his life just in that brief time he had last year.
Tore his ACL, or not his ACL, tore his Achilles tendon, and that was that. They tried a little bit to get that offensive line better, but they did not do everything that was needed to shore it up well enough. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, playing for years behind the Packers offensive line, was one of the best in football. And also he's one of the best escape artists during that time. So you put those two together, and that's why one of the reasons why he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, because he had time to throw. And that's one of the
reasons he had fewer interceptions.
Exactly.
You're on timing and all that.
Yep.
And the one thing I think that it kind of favors the Colts this week is their defensive front's playing pretty well.
They are.
They're getting pressure on guys. So we'll see. And one thing with the injuries, I noticed from guys who were watching practice today, Michael Pittman's out there. I don't think DeForest was, but Braden Smith, I can't remember if they said he was at the – but the fact that Michael Pittman's out there, it tells me that he's going to play Sunday.
Yeah, very encouraging. And the thing about the Colts' pressure on the defensive line is it's coming from the middle, too.
Correct.
That's the toughest place for a quarterback to get it, like right in your face. So it's Buckner and Grover Stewart, who's having perhaps the best pass rush season specifically of his career, is one of the team leaders with 3.5 sacks.
I was going to say Buck leads the Colts in sacks. So he's tied with a couple other players with 3.5. And he was missed 4 games off on IR.
Yeah, he went through that like a 3-year stretch where he was the leading sack guy, which is great for Buck, but not so much for –
right.
I mean, really?
We've talked about that for a couple of years. Like, we love Buckner. He's fantastic, but get some edge.
Yeah,
and that's
you need some edge guys.
And that's why
you'd hope for.
We need – they need to see production. I mean, finished production from Latu.
There have been a lot of almost, but – You got to get to it.
Freeney had a lot of almost also, but he also had a lot of sacks.
Right.
So it's about that. And I realize sometimes pressures and hits serve the purpose with errant passes or too quick passes, but sacks. I mean that's it's Grover getting to Sam Darnold and turning his head off and getting a scoop and score from Kenny Moore. That's what this defense needs.
Leading tacklers, Jamian Sherwood has 97 tackles on the year. Quincy Williams at 74, both linebackers, those two. Tony Adams at safety, 58 tackles for them. At sacks, Will McDonald leading the team with 8 of them. And if you're looking for a tough guy in the middle of the defense, Quentin Williams is a really good nose tackle / defensive tackle as well. He has 5 sacks himself from the center of that defense. Michael Clemens, 4.5 sacks for the Jets defense, which has not played quite as well since Robert Saleh left. But the Jets defense...
I thought all this was his fault.
That's what I thought too. But then...
it was my understanding that it was his fault.
Allegedly. But apparently not, as the Jets just haven't completely pulled themselves out of their...
They went
downturn.
All in.
They did.
I mean, the fact that they went out and got Davante Adams tells you they thought, hey, we're that close to getting this thing going. Mm-hmm. And it's been an absolute train wreck.
They beat the Texans. They've beaten a good team there. Like you can say the Colts beat the Steelers as well this year. Like they beat a good team. So in that sense, it's similar. But then they just lose all these other games against teams that you feel that they're about equal with.
And they got what was it, Patriots that they just got
that was
by?
just ugly.
And that's not a
that was ugly.
I think Steichen and the staff sort of have their work cut out for them to convince the players that this can be a pretty good team.
Right.
The Jets, they've got all stars at a lot of positions. Sometimes the names kind of wow you, and then you see how they're playing. Again, Aaron Rodgers is not playing well, but they still have the potential for a game or two to really get it together. And that's why, if you're not careful, if you're not the Colts, the Colts are in no position to take anybody for granted, none. Mm-mm. But you just need to say, listen, guys, they're at home. If you think we're desperate, they're more so at 3-7. They're like playoff mode every week now with the Jets. So, but from the Colts angle, this is one that, boy, you just got to find a way.
Yeah.
I don't care how ugly it is. I don't care if he does go 10 for 32. If they find a way to win, yeah, I do care. That would be bad. But they've got to find a way to win this game, because the next week, we'll get to next week, but you got Detroit coming up.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, a 9-8 is possible to get in the playoffs. Right now, the Colts have 6 losses, so you lose.
So there's not a lot of there's no wiggle room.
The wiggle room would be gone if you start losing games like this.
Well, that would require you to win your last 5 games,
right?
And that starts with a road trip to Denver, which is playing pretty well. Mm-hmm. So it's you can't keep saying, well, again, Houston lost, so we're not that bad off, but you keep like I've said in match play golf. At some point, you run out of holes to catch up, and that's kind of where the Colts are getting.
Well, and the thing is, Houston lost, but the Colts lost too. Like they had the chance the last 2 weeks to pick up a
That's
game.
What I mean. That's what I mean.
And they didn't.
Yep.
The weird thing is, to me, the past couple years, like the AFC South leader has completely tanked. Like the Jaguars.
Maybe Houston does that again.
Maybe Houston does it this year. Like I'm not putting it out of the picture that the Colts win the AFC South, but it's very unlikely. But again, if you look at recent history, the Titans did it, and it cost Mike Vrabel his job. Like it's just been a weird trend over the past couple years.
Did it last year?
Yeah,
because they looked like, we've talked about this before. They looked like one of the best teams in the AFC last year, and then didn't even make playoffs.
Lawrence got hurt, and that certainly was part of it. But yeah, there were other problems with that team as well, and they didn't.
And now Houston's trying to hurt C.J. Stroud.
Exactly. My goodness, they can't block him.
Terrible.
Looks like the David Carr era Houston Texans. Just can't block anybody. And Stroud, of course, has also not had Nico Collins the past couple weeks, which I'm sure has played a role as well.
He may be back this week.
Should be. Yeah, they opened the practice window for him last week, but he was not active for their game. But I bet he's back this week.
Best stinking news that C.J. Stroud has heard all year is that Nico Collins is going to be able to be back in the lineup pretty soon.
And I know they still beat the Colts, but it was also good news for the Colts that they didn't have to go up against Nico.
Yes, it was good news, but yeah, just couldn't quite finish that year. Your quarterback goes 2 for his first 15. That's not a recipe for success typically in the NFL. Let's get to some rankings first right now. The Jets 26th in the NFL in scoring. They're averaging a whopping 17.7 points per game. Yuck.
Can't win that way.
Yeah, no, can't do it. Colts are 18th in the NFL, averaging about almost 21 points per game. Jets also 26th in total offense, averaging fewer than 300 yards on offense per game. Colts 19th, up at 319 yards per game. Jets 17th in passing yards per game. They are 30th in rushing yards. So they're more a passing team than a rushing team, which to me, like you look at Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a pretty good running back. They have Braylon Allen too, who is, I think he's the youngest player in the NFL, is what I heard on the radio somewhere this week, that Braylon Allen is the youngest player in the NFL. But he's a good young running back too. You got 2 good running backs, decent running backs at least. That tells me your offensive line is just bad run blockers. That if you're 30th in the NFL in rushing right now and still averaging 4 yards per carry, what are you doing there at the end of the day? Colts are 19th in both total offense and passing yards. They are 14th in rushing yards per game, averaging 121.3 yards per game. And Chap, as we were talking about earlier, that number is bigger with Anthony Richardson in the lineup than it is with Joe Flacco in the lineup, just because there is a more dynamic element to that run game. Now, Jonathan Taylor had a pretty good game against the Buffalo Bills, or at least a pretty good half against the Buffalo Bills, we will say. And the wish, I would imagine, for Taylor and for Richardson is to find some of the magic they had in a couple of their games earlier this year, and the fans, of course, as well, to see that running attack really get off the ground.
Well, again, it's the threat that Richardson presents, which opens things up for Taylor, but it's also what Richardson does. He's their second leading rusher with 200 and some yards.
242.
Yeah, and that's not been there. Joe Flacco's not giving you that. So it's not only hopefully the 105 yards that Taylor gives you, but it's the 40 or 50 that the quarterback gives you. He's got doesn't Richardson have one rushing touchdown so far?
Yeah, just one.
Last year he had 4 or 5 in his 4 starts, 5 and 4 starts, whatever it was. So they still haven't figured out how to use him. They haven't. I thought we were talking that we thought maybe that they weren't using him as much in the run game because they were trying to protect him. You just can't do that. That's it. Over these last 7 games, you got to game plan him like you were thinking when you drafted him.
Right.
And then if he gets hurt again, then that gives you more information on moving forward. But it's just a different offense. Now, he can't go 10 for 32. He can't go 44% is, what's our word?
Unsustainable.
There you go. So, and take care of the ball, but he's going to give you the big play. I think I looked in his 6 starts this year as a runner. He's had at least a 20-yard run in 3 or 4 of them. Mm-hmm. And another one he had. So that's what those guys give you. Taylor, which is so crazy, he had 107 yards in the first half. Was it 15 carries, 14 carries? And then he had 5 carries for 7 yards. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. Great running backs, they'll give you 1, 2, 3, -4, 0, 59. That's what they do. And a few times Taylor's given you 59 like 3 times because he's that good of a player. So, and again, what we talked about was so crazy is it was for the most part a 1-possession game when they quit running it for whatever reason. And if you have Richardson, you're not going to quit running it because you're going to have both of them out there doing it. And this is a great for those who keep in stats. Taylor still has a really good chance for 1,000 yards, if that means anything to people. He's got to average, I don't know what it is. It's if he plays 50 yards a game, which he'll do that. So it's. I'm curious how they handle Richardson in the game plan. Use him. I mean, this is who he is. This is how he plays. Hopefully, during his 2 weeks, he's been sitting. He's also realized how to know when a play's over as a runner. It's all of that stuff. So it's going to be really interesting how they attack a Jets team who, again, pretty good defense if you let them get going and get ahead of them early and see how much they've got in them.
There was a perfect play from Josh Allen where he scrambled for a long conversion and he looked to the sideline.
It was 2nd and 19.
2nd and 19. He looked to the sideline as he's passing the first down to gain mark because he knew he was just about there.
Right.
He looked at it. He saw that's it. He immediately slid down.
Right.
Immediately slid down.
That's what you do. If you need 19, get 20, 21 and go down. Don't try to get 25 and get clocked.
Get blown up. The Colts are averaging 4.7 yards per carry this year. Chap, that is tied for 8th in the NFL. Of the 7 teams above them, I'm going to read off to you some of these teams. You tell me if they're having good seasons this year or not. The Baltimore Ravens, pretty good season. Yeah. The Arizona Cardinals,
surprisingly
a pretty good season there. San Francisco 49ers,
without McCaffrey.
Better. Yeah, exactly, doing it without him. Green Bay Packers having a good season themselves. Tampa Bay Buccaneers have lost 4 in a row. They're kind of the outlier here.
Been a little up and down.
In my example,
got off to a good start and kind of tailed off.
Then the next 2 who play tonight on Thursday Night Football, Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. So all these teams above the Colts at 4.7 yards per carry. Like the best teams at carrying the football are usually pretty good teams.
There's another common denominator in several of those teams with the run game.
Mobile quarterback.
There you go.
Yep. You
there
get
you
Lamar,
go.
you get Jaden, you get
Kyler Murray,
Jalen Hurts.
So again, that's it. He just does so much. And of all the talk they gave us and we wrote about in the offseason and training camp about the pressure it's going to put on defenses, they really haven't done that yet. They've got 2 months that they can really show what this offense can be with Taylor and with the big mobile quarterback.
The Jets are 10th in the NFL in points allowed per game on defense, allowing just 21.4. Colts are 16th, 22.3. Colts are 30th in rushing yards allowed. They're still averaging more than 148 yards allowed per game, 4.4 yards per carry. Jets are 25th in rushing yards allowed, still giving up 134 yards per game, 4.3 per carry.
Don't you think if the Colts get 131 yards Sunday, they're in pretty good shape?
I feel pretty good if they get to that
so,
number.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It depends on turnovers, of course, as it always does. But Jets are second in the NFL in passing yards allowed per game, 168 passing yards allowed per game. That's it. Why would you try to throw the ball in this game? Why? Give me one reason. And I don't think
it's 3rd and 7, and you want to convert an 8-yard pass. And that's about it.
And that's the only reason you can think of. And the Colts are 27th in the NFL in passing yards allowed, so two very different defenses in giving up yards through the air. The Jets are 7th in total yards allowed, giving up 302 per game. The Colts are 29th in total yards allowed, 386. Bend but don't break.
It's like 400 yards every week.
Yep, one after the other. Jets are -4 in turnover ratio, which is, again, not a sustainable stat you want for an entire season. They have forced 7 turnovers, only 2 interceptions, as we mentioned earlier. Their one player has both interceptions and have forced 5 fumbles that they've recovered as well. They're where am I? I was looking.
They've turned it over 11 times.
There it is. Yeah, they turned it over 11
times.
7
interceptions and 4 fumbles.
Thank you. Yep.
No problem.
The Colts are dead even. 17 turnovers.
So many.
A -2 last week, right?
Yep.
That'll
hurt. That's not good. And going up against the Bills, you know that they're pretty good at that. So
4 turnovers last week and 17 points off turnovers.
That first stupid play, man, the Joe Flacco throw.
You spot Josh Allen 7 points. You win the toss and you give him 7 points.
You forced him into a punt.
Right. Yep. That's right. I'm sorry, 3 and out.
Mm-hmm. It was great defensive possession. They got to feel great about themselves. They go to the sideline, they're rah-rahing, and then all of a sudden...
Then you look up and you're down 7-0.
Well, the first 8 plays, you had the pick 6. Mitchell, was that the series that Mitchell fumbled? They recovered it.
I think it was because right after they recovered
3 of the
that
first
fumble,
8 plays, they were bad plays.
Right.
Yeah, and then they had the inexplicable screen pass interception.
They gave the defensive tackle his career moment.
Yeah, good for him. The Colts' time possession still dead last in the NFL, 25 minutes, 54 seconds. Jets are 20th, down at 29-24, but I'm sure they're about to have their best result there of the season, judging by how literally every other team has done against the Colts. It's a 1 p.m. kickoff, like I said, MetLife Stadium. If you're in Central Indiana, that'll be broadcast on CBS 4. The Jets in this game are 4-point favorites. 4-point favorites.
Wow.
Yes, according to ESPN Bet that I looked into today.
Given the way that the Colts have played, I guess. But
the over-under is a 43.5, so they're expecting, like a 20-24 ball game right around there in the Jets' favor. I do not think the Jets are going to score 24 points in this game. I just don't have any faith in that offense to put up quite that number, so I would not pick an over in this game. If I had to bet, it would probably be the under, which means the final score is going to be 38-35. So,
like the Cleveland game.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yes,
from last year.
Was it 39-38? Probably the over/under was 39 or 38.
Exactly, total. And so this is the game that the rest of the season hinges on to me. Like, you lose this game and it can go completely in the tank. You win this game. And you're feeling yourself, I think, a little bit. I think if you win this game, you have a chance next week against Detroit. And I was going to go just the opposite.
I was going to say, if you win this week, then I don't care what happens against Detroit.
I think they have a chance to win next week against Detroit if they win this game.
Everybody wins a game they're not supposed to win.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm getting at right here. I'm thinking about what's this team done in the past. They've beat the Chiefs stupidly with that
I got
Matt Ryan
$5 in somebody's money. I'll bet you on that one.
Okay, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it next week because they need to win this game first for, like I said, to actually to feel good about themselves. But I'm going to pick the Colts in this one to make things a little bit interesting because I think this team will make things interesting. They're going to be in the mix.
Well, they did on Wednesday.
I'm going to go with the Colts. Final score 17-14. I think they win a defensive battle there at MetLife Stadium, and they come back feeling good about themselves. And the second Anthony Richardson era, the third Anthony Richardson era, perhaps here in Indianapolis gets off to a good start. Oh yeah, we hope third and final. Matt, what do you have to say?
It is a huge game for Indianapolis, especially if they have any aspirations of getting into the postseason, finishing strong. I'm going to say 23-17. I'm going to go ahead and tentatively pick the Colts here.
There we go. Pick the Colts. Mike Chappell.
We'll make it Homer unanimous.
Let's go.
And to me, it's more of a vote against the Jets.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of faith in that
I don't
team.
have a lot of faith. I think they do have some quit in them. And if they can get out, the Colts can get out, and if they can run the ball, I really think that's I've got like 19-17.
Yeah,
just some odd number with a lot of field goals. I hope Matt Gay has a good day.
Brings his kicking leg with him to New York.
Because I do think the defense is going to play well. I am getting, boy, they'll blow me up now. I'm getting to where I trust the defense to keep games winnable.
I mean, I have felt awful for the defense for the last few weeks because they have forced turnovers. They have been put into some bad situations.
14-10 against Minnesota with 5 minutes to play, and it's winnable.
For all the people who changed their Twitter name to hashtag Fire Gus Bradley, like you look like idiots right now.
Those first 2 weeks,
I understand. Like I understand you being upset then, but now you look stupid because the defense has been the only thing that has kept this team in a lot of these games.
They have forced 17 turnovers, and that is the 5th most in the league.
Damn.
And yeah, the problem with they're giving up the yards,
Yeah.
But boy, it is that they keep score, and this team. I go back to Green Bay. It was 16-10 on the road.
They were awful in that game, and they still had a chance to be in it.
So I've gotten they're getting my trust. I like, and for the most part, they're healthy. I mean, I realize Brent's isn't back, but the secondary's playing pretty well.
It's not been a primary concern.
No.
Right.
And I think the defensive line is playing well. They need to get sacks from the outside guys. Quiddy's coming up with one every now and then. Latu needs to finish. But I trust the defense. I don't trust the offense. That's why I've got 19-17. I think if I figured it, that's like, is that one touchdown and
four field goals?
4 field goals.
Yeah.
That's my math. So I can see that. But again, like you said, I totally agree. This gives you direction, it gives you hope, or it sends you someplace 4 straight with Detroit, and then it can get away very, very quickly with a lot of football left to be played.
And once again, that game will be broadcast in Central Indiana on CBS 4 at 1 o'clock Sunday. You can also catch the Colts Blue Zone pregame show on CBS 4 at 11:30 a.m. Sunday, getting you right into the NFL today and then into Colts kickoff at 1 o'clock. So we do appreciate you listening to this Colts Blue Zone podcast. You can read all of Mike Chappell's work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Matt Adams is at Statomati on Twitter. Mike Chappell is at mchappell51. I'm Dave Griffiths at DaveG_sports. And we'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.